Hello everyone. Thank you all for tuning into my talk. My name is Jacobson. I'm a master's student at the Weizmann Institute of Science. Normally I research bacteria, but today I'm going to speak to you about the NF Python plugin, which is a side project of mine. So why Python and why NF Python? So Python is everywhere in bioinformatics, as you probably know. If you go on GitHub and you look at the main programming language of GitHub projects tagged as bioinformatics, Python together with Jupyter Notebook take more than 50%, with R being the next most popular language. Also, we have lots of resources for using bioinformatics, for doing bioinformatics in Python. So we have Bioconda, which is a package repository with over 10,000 packages. And also it's a supported method of installing Nextflow itself. We have BioPython, a popular package with over 6,000 citations. And Python is commonly taught in biology undergraduate programs and is one of the most commonly known language for people who are kind of like beginners to the field. So it's very important to target it. Now, if you want to do Python in Nextflow, there's a few challenges, and two of the main ones that I see is the first one is that Python code in Nextflow is always isolated in processes, which creates overhead and some boilerplate and is just a bit annoying. The second problem is a bit bigger one, and that's that all communication between Python and Nextflow has to go over string interpolation or over files. And I want to give you two examples of Python usages in Nextflow that I just sampled from GitHub to kind of like show you what I mean by those challenges. So the first problem, I kind of like a bit anonymize the code. It's someone who was trying to read a number from the stat out of a previous process. So this process that's about to use Python gets input X from the previous process, and it returns an output number through the stat out of the Python. So the way it's passing proc stat out into Python is by taking X, doing some replacement of new lines into ampersands, so it doesn't mess up too much with the Python code. Then it inserts stat out by doing string interpolation into triple quotes. Now, the triple quotes are supposed to kind of like protect the Python code from whatever is inside X. Then they're doing some string processing in Python. And at the end, they just print the number to stat out. Now, there's two problems here with this code. The first problem is that whenever the previous process would change its behavior, or if it's like kind of like maybe maliciously controlled, and whenever there's three single quotes in X, it would break this code, which is unfortunate. So basically, like string interpolation is working for this case, but it wouldn't work forever. And the second problem is that when we return the number from Python, we're losing the type information. So the Python code is calling int. So number is a number, but when you just print it into stat out, you lose this information, which is unfortunate. And then the next part in the code that we'd want to use would have to cast it back to int on the Nextflow side. Now here's a second example where they were trying to pass arguments from Nextflow into Python, and they're doing it in a quite clever way. They're using JSON serialization. They just call Groovy JSON output to JSON on two arguments, and then they embed them in Python by doing string interpolation. They protect it by triple quotes, which for JSON should work and shouldn't break suddenly. Then they in Python do import JSON, and they call JSON load string, which gives them the values of arg1 and arg2 in the Python context. Now, this is completely okay. It works for the data types that they're using. but it's still not as nice as it could be. First of all, because it doesn't support all the possible data types that you might want to use. It doesn't support sets, for example. And also because it's quite, it's just a bit of boilerplate that we don't necessarily need, like this calling to JSON and then JSON load string. Just some boilerplate that we shouldn't have to write. So this is kind of like two examples. And now when you kind of like put it in a diagram, you can see that to use Python in Nextflow, you might need up to 4 different data translation steps. Now, some of those steps are kind of trivial, but still, this creates lots of user friction and also sometimes create bugs. So to solve this problem, I decided to write NFPython. NFPython is a Nextflow plugin that allows you to use Python simply in Nextflow. So how does it work? Here's simple, most basic example. It starts by including PyFunction from plugin from the NFPython plugin, which makes Nextflow download the plugin and make it available to use in your code. Then you can use this PyFunction to invoke Python scripts wherever in your flow you can call regular Nextflow functions. So here, when you embed it in your workflow, it will just run this script from this path. Then this doesn't do anything that we couldn't do with regular Nextflow, but we can do like some more complicated stuff. So for example, we can give it arguments. Here the script gets one argument called foo with the value of 1, and we can also pass return values from the script back into Nextflow. So this is already pretty nice, but how do I do this on the Python side, right? Like there needs to be some kind of like syntax on the Python side to get those arguments and return the values back to Nextflow. So on the Python side, it would look like this. You have the module NFPython that contains an object called NF. Now, NF is the object that you use to communicate with Nextflow in the Python context. So you can access the arguments by reading nf.args, which is just a dictionary, and you can return values to Nextflow. You can pass values to Nextflow by calling nf.output with the values that you want to return. Then in this case, when I call nf.output on nfargs foo plus 1, it will return the number 2. And in the context of Nextflow, x will be assigned the number 2, an integer. Okay, so that's great. But how does it work? So it works. Yeah, anyway, I was missing a slide. Let me redo the transition. Okay, so this is great. And aside from integers, it also supports many other data types. So it supports all the basic lists, sets, dictionaries, then all the different number types, booleans, and also paths, and a few Nextflow specific types like memory unit or version number. So this is very cool. And every time you would pass like a list in Nextflow, it will become a list on Python. Every time you pass like a path in Nextflow, it becomes pathlib.path in Python. So how does it all work? You have Nextflow. Then you have the NFPython plugin inside. And when you call PyFunction, basically the NFPython plugin serializes the arguments into the Python script, into a temporary file and Nextflow in file. Then it runs a Python process that will run your script, but it's doing it with 3 modified environment variables. The first 2 is the paths to Nextflow in file and Nextflow out file, and it also modifies Python path to include the directory where nfpython.py is. So basically, the plugin includes already the Python part that gives you the interface to communicate with Nextflow, and then Python finds it because it's inside the Python path when nfPython invokes python.exe or Python, the process. Then the code inside nfPython.py is responsible for deserializing Nextflow infile into Pythonic objects and serializing back the output into Nextflow outfile. Then the nfPython plugin deserializes whatever is in that file when the process ends back into Nextflow context. And basically it's doing all those 4 steps of translating objects back and forth for you over some custom JSON-based format. So design might be a bit complicated, but at the end you get a very simple interface. So what other features do you have? You have inline code support. So if you don't want to put your code in a script, in a separate file, you can just write the Python code directly inside some string block in Nextflow. So for example, here you call PyFunction with just a string argument that contains Python code to compute the square root of the foo argument. And sorry, this is a mistake in the slide. It should have been the square root of 2, but foo is 1. But basically the idea is that you calculate the square root and just put it back in X. Now, another very cool feature that the plugin supports is that you have support for custom conda environments. Now, you might have heard about it or you might know about it, but Nextflow has actually excellent support for running processes under a conda environment. So you can run a process under conda environments that contains like those 3 packages or those 4 packages, or like give it like a custom YAML file. So basically all this existing support for Nextflow, for conda environments that Nextflow brings, nfPython can leverage it to run whatever script or inline code you want to run it inside those conda environments. So in this case, you can just tell nfPython, I want to run this code with NumPy installed, and it will go to the conda repository, download NumPy, and run it with NumPy. So thank you all again for tuning in. We will now pass to the Q&A stage. And I also invite you to scan the QR code or go on the GitHub repository to read a few more examples and documentation about how to use the plugin. And thank you again for tuning in.